Andrea, welcome to the Leaders Lab.
Tan, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
It's so good to see you. We started catching up almost too much before we hit record because Andrea and I have known each other for what, about 5 years now, at
About
least, I
five
think.
years, yes.
Awesome. And so we were in a mastermind together, and I've never really heard your whole background. Like, I've always just known you as Andrea, the fitness lady, that's super hard charging and yeah, always high energy. Like, where did all of that come from? I mean, how long have you been in the industry? What was maybe some of the things from your background that led you there?
So I actually went to school for business, and I wound up in business because I just didn't know what else to do because everything else sounded so great. Like I could have done anything. I wanted to be a botanist and a landscape designer and a tourism official and a world leader and in the military and all these things. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do. So I went into business. And then I had all of these really incredible opportunities just fall into my lap. I was in publishing, I was in advertising, and I just kind of accidentally started getting up this corporate ladder in the world of advertising and publishing. And it was great because I learned so much. It taught me how to be a public speaker. It taught me how to be comfortable traveling alone. I got to go to all these wonderful cities and meet with these phenomenal companies. I learned how to pitch. I learned how to sell myself. But at the end of the day, I just wasn't happy. I didn't love what I was doing. And I'd had some real pivotal moments with fitness and exercise where maybe my self-esteem was lower. I was feeling a little bit depressed. And I grew up in a very healthy eating home and watching my mom work out. And I never really learned well how to work out. And so I found myself in a moment where I needed help myself getting back into shape and getting some discipline and some consistency. I hired a trainer who just changed my life. And I was like, wow, if he can have this kind of impact on me, how could I maybe have an impact like this on someone else? And I just was so, at the time, I didn't know any entrepreneurs. I didn't know anyone who had done anything different or bucked the system. And I thought, life can't be this way, answering to someone else, figuring out, okay, the only time I possibly have to work out is at 4:30 a.m. because I have to get to the office by 7. I better stay until 6 or 7. When am I even going to go to CVS?
Right.
So it was back when we all had to be in an office and just showing face all day long. And thank goodness now things have changed a lot. And then let alone you're just angling for a 2-week vacation. And I'm someone who
Sure.
loves to travel. And so I thought, I love fitness. And at the time, The Biggest Loser had gained popularity. And I was so inspired by these transformations that these people were having and the coaching done by, Bob and Jillian at the time. And I am such a product of being coached and have learned so much from coaches. And I thought, I'm going to just work on this as a plan B and see what happens. And then I wound up, it was funny. I was going to go to Australia to visit some friends, and my boss at the time was like, you can't go. You can't go. And I was like, thanks for the opportunity. I'll see you another time.
So
And
that was the catalyst.
that was it. I
Yeah.
just left. I went to Australia. I didn't even discuss it with her. I probably didn't handle it the best. I just went. And I was like, this is it. I'm diving headfirst into fitness because this is my love. And then I started training my friends for free. I started teaching boot camps. I found a wonderful mentor. And then I had to learn how to gain the confidence to do something I really felt I had no business doing. Like, who am I? I don't have a degree in kinesiology. I wasn't an athlete in school. And so I read, I learned, I studied, I developed the confidence. And then my career just really shifted and evolved. I found that people had a very difficult time with food. If you see a trainer, 1, 2, or 3 times a week, that's only at the maximum 3 hours. There are a
Right.
lot of hours in the week for things to go wrong. So you have to learn how to eat, how to, circumvent those bad habits that you once had. And most importantly, how to create discipline so that you honor this commitment that you've made to yourself. And so everything has just shifted and evolved and weaved over time. I
How
wound
did
up.
you, oh, sorry, not to interrupt, but how did you, I'm curious the time when you went from being corporate to being self-employed, and I know that decision was kind of, accelerated, with a bad boss, but there's still the financial part of it, right? Like, it sounded like you were starting to do it on the side, but I'm guessing you hadn't come close to making up your income yet. Was that scary? I mean, what was that like?
Terrifying,
Yeah.
completely terrifying. But, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. And so, yeah, I had some real nail biter months. I just did. I was also going through a divorce at the time. And I just had a little stockpile of cash. And I was like, this is my little stockpile of cash. And I'm just going to lean into this. And I just simply, I had also read the book, The 4 Hour Work Week
Hmm.
by Tim Ferriss way back when. This is probably in 2009. And I was like, I know I can make this work. And my soul wouldn't allow me to work for anyone ever again. I simply couldn't work for anyone ever again. And so,
Right.
yeah, it was terrifying, but I just had to believe in myself. And in the beginning, you know, as an entrepreneur, you work your butt off. I would
Sure.
go anywhere, train anyone, do anything. I was there for it.
But it sounds like you had this level because your why or your North Star was so huge. It sounds like you had this sort of, I don't want to call it blind faith, but it was like, okay, this might get rough, but it's going to work. It sounds like you had a decent amount of confidence that if you did the right things and stayed to the plan, that it was going to work. Am I right or wrong there? Were you filled with doubt or were you filled with optimism, I guess, at that
You
time?
know what's so funny? I think I was filled with fear
Yeah,
because my fear was I didn't ever want to go back to where I once was.
right.
My fear was having a corporate job. And all I wanted and all I craved was free time and control and to do what I wanted and loved to do. And I just, to me, the opposite meant sitting inside and being in meetings and pitching things I don't care about and working on things I don't really care about. And to me, that felt so soul crushing. And over here, I have this opportunity to help change people's lives and have, like, to me, what were real human connections. So it wasn't so much that I was like, I'm going to be a success and I'm going to crush this. There was part of that, but it was mostly, I can't ever go back there.
No, it's really interesting though, because yeah, there's almost like a change of identity of like, that's not who I am anymore. That old corporate person, I'm not going back there. And I
Yeah.
think that's healthy, not forever. I mean, we forever don't want to be motivated by the fear of falling back. Right. But I think
Right.
initially it's like, okay, some decent leverage on myself. This isn't what I'm doing anymore. I've got my leverage and I've got a vision of what things might look like, even though it's
Yeah.
not all lined out. Yeah. Cool. So where did
Yeah.
it go from there?
So the private cooking thing became really, really intense. And so I wound up bringing on staff to help me. And I just had to make some big decisions in terms of I was working so much and I could feel myself really burning out. And I just super raised my rates. I cut down the areas with which I would work. I became very inspired by food and whole foods and learning about nutrition because even though I'd always eaten very healthfully, I also had gotten into a trap of, diet foods, if you will, protein
Mhm.
bars and low calorie snack packs and those kinds of things. And then I dove deep into the world of like holistic nutrition and learning about the ingredients and what's in a salad dressing container and what is hydrogenated soybean oil. What is, I don't know. There was just so many ingredients I started to look at and really wonder and question things. So I wrote 2 books on all natural protein shake recipes called Moan Out Loud Protein Shakes. I self-published those and created them. I started doing digital programs as the world started to evolve and change and became more digital and user friendly, from being able to work with people from far away. I wound up opening a group fitness studio in Central Phoenix in January 2020.
Oh, I
We
remember
all know
talking to
back
you.
when
I haven't talked to you since then, but I remember when you were looking at the building. I think we had a couple of talks in like
we had any talk.
2019. Yeah.
Oh, that was a little kick in the guts. But my dream was to open premium fitness studios in mid markets. If you go to New York, if you go to San Francisco and LA, there are these phenomenal workout modalities. And I thought, in Arizona, Phoenix is a huge city and all we have is yoga and Pilates and maybe some
Mhm.
Zumba here and there. But I'm like, there's these superstars in the fitness world who have these phenomenal modalities. Let me bring that to more mid markets who are just craving that. And we opened our doors in January 2020. 8 weeks later, we were forced to close. We were able to open again for 2 weeks and then close and then open and then close. And I thought, wow, the world is a long ways away from being able to have 40 sweaty bodies in a room.
Right.
And I didn't see myself wanting to pivot. So I'd already done private training for so long that wasn't really in my soul anymore. And talking about having an identity shift, that was a big identity shift for me. I was able to walk away from the lease. So I, respectfully hit pause on that business and said, thank you, maybe another time.
Mm-hmm.
And shortly after became pregnant with my second baby. And my whole world changed because I was used to seeing clients and working with people, and that was no longer an option. Everyone was working from afar. Everyone learned how to work out from home. I felt very lost because I always had this strong identity of Andrea, the fitness girl, the food girl, and I happened to have a child. And now I didn't so much have that uh, identity of myself professionally. And then I was pregnant with my second, which seemed to me felt like, okay, I'm officially a mom now.
Right.
Like, that
There's no
is mom.
studio. There's two kids. Yeah. I mean, sure.
And I never saw myself as that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I did what I always have known to do, which is reach out to people farther along from me and say, let's just talk because I'm feeling stuck. I don't know what's next. And, you and I were in this mastermind called M1, and I met some wonderful people in there. And I just started having conversations, and people said, just start pouring into your brand, start pouring into your identity and put one foot in front of the other, make yourself more present on social media, which was always a struggle for me. And there was a woman that I followed on Instagram who I thought was really inspiring. She was educated and beautiful and a terrific mother and had a Georgetown MBA and was really just crushing it as an influencer. And so I stalked her online and I said, I know this sounds crazy, but I would love for you to coach me and I will pay you. And she said, I've never done this before, but I stalked her and she worked with me, and I really started growing and developing my Instagram channel and then broadening what I do in that way. And then I wound up starting a podcast and have created some digital programs. So now fitness and training is really a small percentage of what I do. And the rest of what I do is more digital and fun.
Yeah.
Not that
So
fun, that's fun too.
your podcast, by the way, audience, podcast is the Andrea Barkley Show. It's really good. But you'll get to know Andrea even more as we talk, today. But you've just got such a well-balanced approach, I think, to, first of all, even in the way that you're explaining it, it's like, you weren't like hatched out of some fitness egg and like, knew all this stuff. It's like you've just been learning about it longer than the rest of us, right? You've been diving in. This has been, key to who you are and who your brand is and what you're passionate about. And I think that comes through in the way that it's delivered so that, at least when I listen to you, it's not intimidating. It's very approachable, all of it. Even some areas I feel like I have some proficiency in, some others I don't. And I feel like it's very approachable. So not that you have to be specific here, but how did all of your revenue at one point was personal training. And
Yeah.
now almost none of your revenue is personal training. How have you monetized your online presence, I guess? Is that mainly through books and online courses, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah. Well, I should say that a good deal of my revenue still is from personal training and fitness and even private cooking for people. But a significant chunk is from doing influencer deals, sponsorships. And then I have two digital programs that I offer right now. One is called the Freshman 15 Survival Guide. And that is a program that is tailored to college girls who are struggling with a freshman 15. Student athletes have been a big chunk of my demographic since getting into fitness. And it's teaching them how to eat, how to work out, and most importantly, how to commit. Because commitment, in my opinion, is the most important thing that there is to success, is having the discipline in committing. And then I have another program called the Daily Motivator, which is a text program where I'm basically a personal trainer in your phone on your nightstand. So when you wake up in the morning, there is literally a text from me giving you homework and action items of what to do for the day. And you can reply to me if you have questions. You can send me a form on or a video with form checks. If something hurts, I'm there to answer. I'm there to root for you. So,
So it'll literally be like the workout for the day or whatever you're supposed to do.
Here's a little challenge, or something might be, I would say it's 70% fitness and 30% food. So one day might say, your challenge today is to go see how fast you can run a mile,
Mm-hmm.
and no sugar today at all. And the next day might be, your challenge today is to have salad for breakfast and give me 30 minutes of really heavy weightlifting. something like that. And
Very
then it's
cool.
a little thing that you might, it's because some people are already fitness minded and they already have a routine that they like, but they want a different challenge. Um, or they want to mix things up, or maybe they're stuck in a rut. And I don't know, I'm such an avid believer in coaching. Coaching has really just changed my whole life that um, I think most of us want to improve and be better. And this is just a simple way to do that. And I wish they existed when I was on my journey.
Yeah, I feel like you personally, just from knowing you personally, you're such a great student in that you're just always hungry for like information. I feel like almost
And
to the point where like when we were in that mastermind, and I've talked to you about this before, where I was like, are we serving it up fast enough? Right. Like, because I felt like you could consume stuff and not just, some people will digest it and not take action, but I mean, I felt like you were getting stuff, taking action, getting stuff, taking action. I feel like you just operate that way. And I'm sure it's been good for your
well,
business.
I think at some point in the world of personal development and growth and being a leader and wanting to be a better leader and a stronger entrepreneur and in really any area of your life, there's levels, right? So some people come in and it's like if you go to Tony Robbins' first seminar, that might really just change so many people's lives if you've never experienced anything like that. But if
Right.
you've always been reading books and doing the introspection and the work, you need something a little bit more on a higher level,
Yep.
So it's finding the right thing and finding the right balance when you're not here anymore and you're not quite here, but you want to be, maybe you're more here.
What are you doing now to push yourself and to keep growing? I know you're never standing still. So what kind of things are you involved in these days?
Right now I'm doing my best to learn a lot about Facebook ads of all
Hmm.
things to sell my business. They really are the modern day billboard.
Sure.
Um, and to me, the discipline of habit or the habit of discipline. I love to read. I'm constantly reading books that challenge me, but I also find that I have to kind of temper it. I'll read something on personal development and growth in any capacity. And then I'm like, okay, give me a moment to work on that and noodle it and give me some fiction.
I'm the same way. Like I need to digest, you know what I
I
mean?
need
I
to
know a lot of
digest.
people who just read like all the time and I'm like, give me something and then let me take my 6 bullet points from it and figure out how we're going to integrate those or not. I mean, it depends on what kind of book it is, but if it's something where action is required, which most personal development books are, then yeah, I want to take time to like implement it.
That's it. That's it. And then, so I give my brain a break. I read some fiction, but I get my best um, ideas and my most creative ideas when I'm active, when I'm outside in nature. My big focuses right now are on my podcast and growing the podcast, in public speaking. I've done a fair bit of speaking and I'd like to amplify that bit of my business as well. And then just continuing to grow and reach and help and inspire more people.
Talk to us about starting your podcast because I've noticed you sometimes do interview shows like I do, and you sometimes do monologues. And
Too.
monologues can be tough. I feel like, it's like 20, 30 minutes just into a mic, right? Which is probably why I do interviews. But um, where did you, I mean, it's been going for what, about a
About a
year
year and a
now?
half. No,
Okay.
actually, it'll be 2 years in March. 2 years in
Okay.
March.
Awesome. So,
Yeah.
how did you get started in that? Did you have to find a producer? Did you do it on your own? Like, what did all of that? Because I'm actually conducting a podcast workshop for some people in my industry on
Cool.
Wednesday, and I'm curious
Very
what
cool.
your insights were when you got started.
Yes. So I got into podcasting because to me, podcasting is the modern day blogging.
Sure.
It's taken that place and it's a neat way to connect with people and meet people and also help inspire people. And I I think about it two ways. One is this is my opportunity to help teach and coach all the things that I know and what I've learned over the years. And I'm, 20 years in this business. And also, I think that I'm a wonderful example of um, balance. I'm not necessarily the fittest person you've ever seen, but I am happy and healthy and my body works and I'm 46 years old. you
Yeah,
know?
and you're pretty close to the fittest person I've ever seen. So I mean,
No, I'm
you're
not. I'm not. But you know what? I take pride in that. I take
yeah.
pride in being the fittest person ever because I literally only work out for 30 minutes a day and I do it 7 days a week and that's it. And it's not intense. I call it bringing my B game where I don't crush it every single day. Um, and I don't slack every single day, but I just show up. I show up and I do the work in a way that feels good and I eat in a way that nourishes my body. And I also have some indulgences. So I think I'm a real picture of consistency, but most importantly, aging well, having fun, being comfortable in your own skin. And to me, that's what life is, doing the cannonball into the pool and playing with your kids and feeling sexy at any age. So that to me, I want to share with others. And then I'm also in a state of awe over so many people, and I have so much to learn from so many people. And that's the other aspect I wanted to bring into the podcast is I can teach you, and also let's learn from these other magnificent people who know things about like natural fertility, are really deep divers on macro counting. I had this amazing man on the show who had recovered from extreme alcoholism and addiction just from going out every night after work, being in sales and having some drinks, and things got out of hand. And he now has a recovery program. And there's just so many fascinating people out there that I want to talk to. And then what a phenomenal platform. I am an avid reader to connect with writers who are life changing. Like,
Sure.
I read this wonderful book called The Bloated Belly Whisper. I just sent her a message. Do you want to be on my show? One of my fitness icons, Tosca Reno, to reach out to her and say, gosh, I would love to talk to you. And her story, she's, been at the Arnold with Arnold, was
Right.
married to Bob Kennedy, who was like the publisher of, these great fitness magazines, and had her own modern day Cinderella story, going from obese and in an abusive marriage to literally a best-selling author of the Eat Clean diet and Clean Eating magazine. So to be able to talk to these people is not just inspiring, hopefully for my listeners, but really inspiring for me.
No, I hear you. And I remember at the beginning, I used to stress because, again, we're an interview show. So it's like every week I got to have somebody. And I remember at the beginning, like one of my biggest stresses during the week was just like, oh my God, who are we going to get on the show? Or we only have one more show built up like in backlog because I usually want to have a few shows, in the chamber, sort of, so to speak. And all of a sudden it went from that to we got who? Like, like so and so's coming on the show,
No.
and then somebody else, and then somebody else. And then we've had so many. I had somebody on. I'm not going to tell who because they might call me out on it. But I had an author on, and I had his book sitting right next to me, and I didn't realize it until like I got on with him and I hadn't read the book yet. It was like sitting right next to me. It was just on my to-do list. And we had that many good authors on lately that I didn't have a ton of time to prep, and I didn't prep properly, and jumped on with him and realized he was the author of the book that it was next to read for me, which was amazing. And yeah. And
Amazing.
so, yeah, it's been such a gift. I agree with you on that part. I mean, it's like a 1 hour of education, every week with these folks. So
It is. And when I first started, I like little snippets of stuff. I don't
yeah,
want to, I very rarely listen to anything for an hour. And
yeah,
so I was giving these 7, 8 minute episodes where it's really just, hey, coaching, you can do it. Here's how to satisfy cravings. Here's how to get the most out of your workout. Here's this, just little nuggets of motivation. And then I go to a professional podcasting studio and they produce the shows for me. And I like that for me because it just keeps me on track.
yeah.
Uh, I just show up and do it and they take care of the rest. And that works for me and my life. But the producer said, Andrea, you need to start having longer episodes. And so I only record every other week. For me, that works for me in my schedule. And I feel like there's plenty of fitness content out there. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Right.
And so I have started having longer episodes if it's just a solo episode. And so the monologue, I try and include to me. So my podcast is about fitness, food, and living fulfilling life with your family. And so I just kind of weave in and out of those topics, and hopefully it's inspiring for people.
I mean, so you're a mom of two now, and
Yeah.
you had to like, go through COVID, which impacted no industry more than, like the fitness industry, really. I mean, there were some that were probably tied with you, but you were certainly at the forefront of that in terms of the damage done. And so you
Yes.
had to go through multiple identity changes, multiple business restructurings. You had another baby along the way. I mean, what were some of the toughest moments during that? I mean, was it shutting down the studio? Was it that identity thing after baby number two? Like, what did that look
Oh,
like for you, and how did you get out of it?
yeah, the identity thing for me for sure.
Yeah.
And really just talking to others. I literally reached out to people I mean, I only kind of knew.
Hmm.
And like I'd been introduced to and said, would you be generous enough to take a phone call with me? I'm having a personal pivot. And I would just love your feedback on this. Like, what do you see and what do you think? And the feedback was all, universal, just you are a brand and start moving into that position of you being a brand. And then I'm a big believer in therapy. I'm a big
Yeah.
believer in finding someone who works for you and who can, help guide you with things. And also for me, learning that, there are seasons in your life, and there's a there there's all kinds of seasons. And I happen to be in a season of a complete business transformation, and also a personal transformation is being a mother. And even though I already was a mother, two's different. Two is way
Right.
different than one. And then really embracing that. Like I only have this very short window of having little kids. And it is such a blessing. It is such a gift. And is everything perfect? No. But you know what is amazing about having kids? I wonder if you feel this way. Is I having children taught me to be more disciplined. It taught me to
Hmm.
take better control over my time management, my commitments to myself, because I have to work around them. And I
Right.
want to spend as much time with them as possible. And also, what was really interesting is I would have, babysitters. Those babysitters were always on time. They were always hard workers. I was inspired by my own babysitters. Like, I better get my act together. If these girls can get here at 4:45 in the morning, I better be ready to rock. And I also learned too that, parenting small children is an extreme sport. You've got to train like an athlete for it. And so what does
Absolutely.
that mean? You go to bed at a reasonable hour, you limit your alcohol, you wake up so you can feel great, you work out first thing in the morning so you have energy for the day. And no one's going to do it at 4 o'clock if you're a parent. Like, forget it. And so you get up, you work out, you make your bed, you put yourself together, you look presentable. And then what are your dreams? For me, my dreams are reaching and touching people and inspiring others. And that's not something I can let go of. And I think it's important for my girls to see that.
I liked what you said about, if anything, having kids made you more disciplined, because I think, it's funny, when we started our first business, Shannon and I remember it was in April, and we had, many years ago in April, not this year. And we had bought this business. We were really young, and we had bought this business mostly on like signature loans and credit cards and stuff like that. And we had bought this business. And don't get me wrong, I was taking it seriously. I had every intention of making it really, really go. But about a week after we signed our lives away, Shannon was pregnant with our daughter, Haley.
Yeah.
And the fire all of a sudden in my belly was just like huge. It was like, well, because up until then, it was like, well, we can just get new jobs if this doesn't work out. Really, in the back of my mind, I was like, what are the consequences really to this not working out? And I suppose you could say the same thing even if you have a child, but that's not how I felt. I was like,
Yeah.
it has to work.
It has to
And
work.
yeah, and we have two kids like you, and 4 years later, her brother Anthony was born, and it was kind of the same thing. It was like we were at maybe a plateau in the business, and it was again motivation to go, hey, there's another mouth to feed, there's another person to eventually put in school or whatever, and again motivation to keep going. And I think if you're as goal oriented as you are, or our audience is, you've got to balance that, right, with still trying to reach all these things that you're trying to do during the day, which I think, outsider looking in, I know there's been a lot of work that's gone into it, but I feel like you've always found your way back onto that growth path, which has been awesome. So
Thank you.
are you feeling pretty balanced right now with like where the business is and where life is right now? Or is it feeling pretty congruent at this point now, having made it through COVID and all these shifts that you've had to do?
Does it ever?
Well, sometimes more than others.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in another transition. I feel like I'm in this other next precipice of more growth. I always feel like I have more to do, more to give, more I can lean into and just, vulnerably sharing. We've had a little bit of a tough summer. I found out my mother passed away. We had
Sorry.
another tough death in the family. And just some personal struggles in our family. And that it's interesting that you ask that question, because those things, when I'm such a happy-go-lucky person, and I feel like I'm always full of sunshine, and
Sure.
it feels awful to not feel full of sunshine. It feels
Sure.
awful. And so it's been a question on my heart these last few months, is how do you manage really feeling um like not up to par,
Right.
and letting that be okay, and climbing out of it. And
Right.
so I just go back to, what are the root things that I know to be true? I know that I feel best when I'm giving. And for me, that's giving in the form of like inspiring and teaching. I feel best when I'm on my fitness game. I feel best when I'm on my food game. And I feel best too when I am financially balanced and creating revenue and creating opportunities, because to me, that means it's like an exchange of,
Hmm.
I'm giving to the world. And so the world is giving back to me financially. So at this moment, do I feel super congruent? No, but I also know that it's because I'm in a season of uh, just like kind of a tough emotional patch, and it's situational, and there are other things coming on the other side.
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes, first of all, I mean, I'm sorry you had to go through all that. And I think that, honoring grief and honoring how you're feeling is good. And I think at the same time, I mean, staying congruent to the foundation that got you to where you are, even when it doesn't feel that great. I think that, the best measurement of leaders or professionals or entrepreneurs that I know that have been extremely successful, it's not so much what they do when everything's going super well. It's sticking to their disciplines and the things that are important to them. And I'm not saying that means you got to grind it out and work out every single day. I don't
Oh,
mean that. In
no.
fact, sometimes it's knowing when you need to rest and sit back. But I mean, just one step forward, even if it's baby steps, right? I mean,
That's
I
it.
yeah,
That's it.
um,
And knowing that it's okay to not always be performing. And that's
yes,
a tough thing for me, because I feel best when I do. So it's learning. And I feel like in life, you're always learning and growing. And sometimes I wish that I didn't have that drive.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes I wish I didn't have any ambition. Like, I have friends who wonder about whether or not they should be mothers. And I think if you don't have any ambition, that would be awesome.
Right,
Like, how
right,
awesome to just enjoy hanging out with your family and raising your children. Like, that sounds like a dream. Meanwhile,
sure,
I'm like, okay, you're going down for a nap, and I've got to do A, B, and C, and I need a sitter for this, and I've got to get up at, this time to do that. And not that I don't enjoy all of it, I do. But I have to learn that it's okay to not constantly be growing. And sometimes things are going to be off, and that has to be okay.
does spirituality play a part in your life? And I'm not talking about religion, but just in general.
For sure, 100%. And for me, my spirituality comes from being in nature, being in the sun, and in particular, exercising in nature and in the sun. Um, I, in fact, I just had her on my podcast, and like, it was a total pinch me moment. But there's this woman, her name is Linda Ockerson McGurk. She wrote a book called There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather and Open Air Living. And when I read her books, and I read the first one a few years ago, it spoke to me and my soul how important it is to be outside for your mental health, for your physical health, for really everything depends on that. And so I just lean into that. I
Right.
lean into what I know feels good. And that's kind of it for me.
Yeah, I
Dance,
think that
music,
this,
fun, movement. Yeah.
in recovery, I read a book called Recovery 2.0, and it's by a guy that's now a friend of mine named Tommy Rosen, and he kind of rewrote the Alcoholics Anonymous 12 steps into something that's a little more digestible for those of us that kind of found this later in life or whatever. But
Yeah.
he talks about something that I just feel like is so, like, it for me, from a spirituality aspect, it just kind of threads the needle in all aspects of my life. And it's like, he talks about coming from and living from consciousness, understanding that we're all just part of, one big kind of energy circle. And can I flow with it instead of fighting it all the time? You know what I
Mm.
mean? And so,
Mhm.
so in times where things are tough, a lot of times it's, is the universe, I think a lot of times people say, why is this happening to me? And sometimes it's happening for you, that type of thing.
Yes.
And kind of taking that intentional pause before reacting to things. And I've found that to work in all aspects of my life when I'm engaged with it. It's been really, really good. So,
One of the things I was really moved, there's a book called Radical Forgiveness. Have you read
mm-hmm.
this book?
I've
And
seen it.
yeah, I mean, it's pretty woo-woo, but also it's basically thanking people for coming into your life, good or bad, for what they have taught you. So like, thank you for that. And I forgive you. And I had a conversation actually with a therapist that I work with, and she's wonderful because she also does like executive coaching. And I can talk with her. I can get on a call with her and be like, I have 5 things I want to go over today. Boom, 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 boom. We get it all done. We don't like labor over anything. We just get it out there.
Yeah.
And I love that. And one of the things she said was, are you in a position right now to change for this particular subject to change? Is there anything you can do to make this particular thing change? And I said, no. And she said, then I want you to really embrace the concept of radical acceptance,
Because
that
it's out of your control.
out of my control. So you radically accept it. And what does that mean for you and your soul if you can radically accept it? And I'm like, wow, it changes everything. It changes everything. And sometimes things are just sad.
Right.
Sometimes things are just sad, and it's not really, there isn't really anything you can do except do those things that fulfill you spiritually.
Well, I think that's where so much of our, angst and discomfort and all of that comes from, is we're constantly trying to change things that are outside of our control, and almost everything's outside of our control. But I just mean, whether it's people or the way that people react to things, or, why isn't this happening at this time in the way that I want it to, right? And it's like, you don't have control over that. We have control over, again, going back to the basics. For you, that's being out in nature, that's sticking to your fitness routine, and probably being with your girls and your husband and all of that. And it's like, that's the stuff that'll get you to the promised land. Maybe not tomorrow, right? And maybe
Uh,
not even today, but over time it definitely will.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Spirituality is a big one. And I think you can feel when you're out of alignment with it. I always have a real connection spiritually as well when I'm traveling. There's just something about putting your phone down and being someplace different culture.
Totally.
Again, you're back in nature.
It's
Yeah.
almost like permission to connect, right? Like you've
Yeah.
disconnected from all this other stuff, so it's like permission to connect with whatever's out there. It's funny. I notice when I'm out of balance, because I'll get short with people. I don't know if my podcast producer will listen this deep into this episode, but it was pretty funny. It manifested itself. I noticed myself like getting shorter and shorter with people, whoever it is. Could be Shannon, could be, anybody, my friends. And then this all manifested itself into over email, me like kind of email shouting at my podcast producer, to which I reread everything the next morning and went, oh my God, why did I do that? And it was a
Sorry.
complete disconnect. Yeah, it was just a complete disconnect with
Yeah.
what was actually happening at the time, misreading into things, assuming outcomes, things like that. And so it's nice to have those self checks at least now. I think back in the day, I just didn't have them. I would have been like, no, I
Oh,
was right.
yeah. Oh, I do the same thing. And when I feel myself get short and I freak out over something so stupid, and you know it in your soul. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, let me go for a run.
Totally,
Let me
totally.
go for a run and I'll come
It's
back.
me, not you, right? Well,
It's me, not you. I deeply apologize. Yeah.
how can our audience find you?
So I'm probably most active on Instagram. And
Mhm.
so if you go to Instagram, I'm at Andrea Barkley. You can visit me online at andreabarkley.com. And those would be the 2 best ways to connect with me. And then, of course, the podcast is the Andrea Barkley Show.
And
And
on
that's
your
available
website,
on
is
Spotify.
that where they can get to your digital programs as well?
Yes, yes. The first one, andreabarkley.com/motivate. is the Daily Motivator, the text messaging program. And then andreabarkley.com/F15 survival guide. That's the freshman 15 survival guide for all those college girls who need help dropping that freshman 15.
Awesome. You got to get, you got to become an expert in TikTok if you're not already, just so you can get more.
Oh, I
I know.
tried. I just, oh,
I,
I don't know.
I'm guessing that's where your demographic might be. You might have to lean into it.
No, I know. I'm going to lean into those TikTok ads.
There you go.
Yeah.
Andrea, great to see you. Let's
Great
not
to
make
see
it so
you,
long next time.
Ken. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. Take care.
You too.